Welcome to the Multifarious Man Podcast, episode 701, The Art of Performance, part 1. As always, I am your host, John Michael Vincent, aka the Multifarious Man. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Multifarious Man and find links to all previous episodes of the show along with essays and reviews at www.multifariousman.com. Well, here we are, season 7 premiere episode, and I am so excited of what's in store for this year. So, full disclosure, I turned 49 today. So, in honor of what is my 49th leading into my 50th year on this earth, my plan is to record 50 for 50. So, it's not a countdown, it's a count up, but it's really an endeavor to record 50 episodes this year. So that's pretty much almost one per week. So I'm looking forward to what's going to be an exciting year to bring you more interviews, more reviews, and just my excitement of all things performing arts, small business, and just my general, views of how I see things. So I am looking forward to that. So without further ado, this first episode I'm really excited about. So today I am interviewing a lady that I met many moons ago in the City College Theater Department. Her name is Aixa Kendrick, and she is an amazing actor, writer, director, producer, multi-hyphenate, mystical warrior. Anything you can think of, she does. So over the course of what's going to be a two-parter, because when Aixa and I got together last week and talked, it was just wide-ranging. So I'm excited about everything that we're going to discuss, from her upbringing as a multicultural world traveler to time at the City College Theater Department and on to what she's actually doing today in the world of theater, film, and television. So without further ado, after the break, my interview with Aixa Kendrick.
I'm very greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand. I'm the multifarious man.
Welcome to the Multifarious Man Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Vincent, aka the Multifarious Man. And today I am so pleased to have a wonderful guest. This young lady I have known for many years. We met on the campus of City College in Harlem, New York in the early 1990s. Now, my daughters, who who the audience have heard on, a show I did last year where they talked all about Taylor Swift, they'll joke and be like, "Oh, you sure it's not the 1890s?" No, it's the 1990s. And it does feel like forever ago. I don't feel like I've aged at all. And actually you still just look as amazing as ever. How we take care of ourselves is important. It really is. So welcome to the show, Aixa Kendrick.
Thank you.
I am so thrilled to have you on the show. Thank you so much for agreeing. Very gracious of you. And for those that know you, that's not surprising. So I can honestly say, from the time we met in school, you've always been very open, very caring. Just genuine, just a very genuine person. There was no, aloofness about you. Although you carried yourself, it always felt like you carried yourself like a dancer. So you have to tell me, are you trained in dance? You just know how some people just have that, almost like gliding, and it always,
I like that.
it always felt like that. And I don't know if that, we can kind of talk more about your journey. But for those that don't know you, like, where are you from originally? Where were you raised?
Wow. Okay, so that's a mega intro. I'm honored. I'm back at you with honoring, because you were amazing, and I am so honored that you even asked. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And it's so cool to see you rise and shine and do what you're doing and sharing your like input and curiosities and book smarts and street smarts and life smarts. It's very interesting to watch and hear you do your thing. So that's always a very interesting question. So I'm going to try and make it the shortest and most honest way to explain it. I always say I'm from my mother and my father.
I like that.
Primarily because it wasn't quite where I was born or raised, because I was raised in multiple places. Okay. So you're a multifarious man. I'm a multi-locale sister, and as well as just we're multicultural and all of that. So, being that my mother, Carmenilla Allende, was born in Puerto Rico and raised in Puerto Rico. Woo-hoo. Woo-hoo. Wepa. There's that kind of cultural reality, as well as then our father, Donald Gene Kendrick, was born and raised in Alabama. So that's the whole other thing. But they met in San Jose, California.
Wow.
And they were in college. They were like, hey, you. And so they had my sister first, and then they had me.
Okay.
So we were kind of raised briefly in a house that he built in San Jose that he kept for a while. Mm-hmm. And then his job took him and moved us all to New York for a bit. And being that he was an aerospace engineer.
Boom.
Yeah. So outside of, working for folks like NASA or Ford Aerospace or Jet Propulsion Laboratory, he was just doing lots of interesting things. Okay. But we were in Westchester for a bit, and then we moved to Gary, Indiana for a year.
Okay, Jackson's.
What? The funny part is that they were around the corner.
Wow. 2600 Jackson Street.
Oh, that's the crazy part. Yes.
Wow.
And even we had no idea how important that record was, that ABC record, but we got one of their first ABC records.
Wow.
Yes.
Small World, one of my favorite groups of all time.
Phenomenal, powerful forces of nature. And just Michael was just, but the brothers were also the support system. Yes. It's not just one. So, but outside of that, then we moved back, and then, did some stuff, did stuff in Westchester, then went back to LA, then went back, and then went to different countries. So
wow, you've lived a lifetime. Like, it's like when you hear these stories and people, and then you just kind of hear that part of it, and it's like when we were in school, we focused on being in school and, doing our thing, learning the craft, enjoying each other, learning different cultures. And I think, for those that don't know, that whole thought of multicultural casting and, City College, City University of New York, the theater department.
This word diversity.
Yes. And it was living and breathing every day. We got to meet people from so many different cultures, from so many different backgrounds, from around the world. And it just felt right. Like it really was, the whole thing they talk about today. It's like, oh, you just cast the best people. It doesn't matter. Make a diverse cast. And then the whole, the world was taken on storm by Hamilton. And it's like, it's like, well, how do you have people of color playing, Alexander Hamilton? And it's like, when we went to school, whoever got the part played the part. and I guess maybe growing up in theater and being part of theater, and I don't know, how do we explain it? It's like the character it's not the person, it's the character. And maybe we spend so much time with people, and then we see them inhabit the character that they become. I guess maybe I'm spoiled that way. I'm always able to see past the person and see who they become once they step on that stage or get in front of that camera. And maybe that's because we got to see the creative part behind the scenes, and you see that transformation. The process.
And I think that's what you're talking about, is this concept of the story. Everybody has a story, their life story. Just like you asked me, where are you from? Where you come from? What's your story? So, that's what defines the character called Aixa, and us being in theater or exploring and being asked and challenged to actually embody these new people, but then you find yourself, the similar things are guiding the story. And so that helps you actually identify more with other people and be able to kind of go, I may not even understand, like in a foreign film, you may not even understand the language, and you're like, oh yeah, I've been there. I get that. I see this. I know this.
Yes.
Right. Can identify. So yeah.
So talking about that, when did you discover that you wanted to be a performer? Like when did you get that bug that said, oh, I like, make believe. I like creating things. I like inhabiting someone else. Where did that come from?
Oh gosh. Those Tonka trucks and those little people.
Wow.
They always had stories to tell.
Did you have the little people airport?
And the airplane.
Yes.
And we had the airport that opened up,
It opened, like an L shape. Yes.
And the little driveway up and down, the old
wow. The toys we all had.
Yeah. And so they all had lives, and they all had towns, and from one room to another we would drive, us as kids, we'd tell stories. So one day, I guess one of us would be the director. Okay, this is what's going to happen. And then the other one is like, and then we act it out. And I think all kids and all within any culture, we all have the actor in us. We're all embodying, stories, characters. That's how we identify anything anyway. But so to me, it wasn't anything particular. I think because of our mom, one of her friend's sisters, Malene Falou, she was one of the cultural people for an education for PBS. And so she was working on some stuff for vegetable soup and also Sesame Street. And so, on occasion, I would do like voiceover, reading those poems.
Okay.
Those little poems and stuff. But I just did it because it was something we did.
It's fun. It was something. It was normal.
Grandmother. Yeah, but our grandmother was a performer. Our mother's mother, she would write and recite poems. She would act out characters. So this whole concept of storytelling was just familiar. It was never. Like duck.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's interesting. And you mentioned something is, we think there's so many cultural differences, but the story and storytelling is something common against, for all cultures. Every culture has that one thing in common, is the story, and, and how it brings us together. It's how, we communicate with our elders. It's, I just remember as a kid hearing stories from my grandmother, from my father, these stories, and everyone had their way of acting things out, whether it's doing voices and it was just something you expected. And you're right, as kids, playing with the little people and, making up little stories. And my father was a librarian by trade, so I grew up in the New York Public Library system. So from the time
and that was a magical place. We would go to the library all the time.
And I got to see the behind the scenes of the library. So I got to see how they decided the books, when they took books off the shelf. So I knew everything. I knew the Dewey Decimal System. I knew old school card catalog. I got to go in the main library in New York, the one with the lines, and go behind the scenes and see the elevators that they used to bring. So for me, the world of stories always existed, and I was never limited to what I could read. It wasn't like, oh, you can't, because you remember you used to have a library card for the children and one for the adult. I wasn't limited to what I could read. I could read whatever I want. If I felt like reading it, I could read it. Anything and everything. And I'm sure there's things I shouldn't have read, not because it was content that I shouldn't have been exposed to, but in the sense of I wasn't prepared for what I was reading. So I didn't really get to understand and appreciate it as much as I do now going back. But
wow, gift though. What a gift.
Oh, yeah. I tell people that all the time. When I was sick, I was at the library. Summer school, summers, I was at the library. So I got to check people's books out. I would read everything, fiction, nonfiction, biographies, autobiographies, newspapers, encyclopedias. I just was whatever it was, I would read it. And to this day, my wife and I, we both are avid readers. Our daughters read all the time, and as technology comes along, I listen to Audible. I read on my Kindle. I read physical books. So it's like just stories and inhabiting it. Yeah. It's
very nurturing, and it's very expanding, and it's life affirming. And so I did that, but back to the story, I constantly kept wondering, well, what is my role here, and what would I like to do? And so I kind of veered from that for a little bit, thinking, let me do international politics, let me do environmental design, let me do a few other things when it came to figuring out how to help kind of humanity.
Okay. So how did that lead you to the theater department at City College?
Well, that's what I'm trying to keep it short, yo. I'm trying to keep it short. The key thing was, I went to a mad hippie school when I was doing the international politics, and you got to live in different countries, and you got to learn a lot and meet a lot of cultures and stuff. But I realized, that place led me to one place, led me to another place, and I. By the time I got to City College, I was like, the politics thing doesn't work for me. I see all the stories everybody's telling from a different echelon or a different concept. And it's not quite the story I would like to tell, because I would like to have more positive impact.
Okay.
So then I was like, let me take cultural linguistics and anthropology at City College. And so that's what I was doing, kind of focusing on that with some politics. Okay. And then I was talking to people, and then I walked down the hallway. I think it was in NAC building.
Okay.
And walking in the NAC building, and then I saw a sign and said audition, right? And now, mind you, I only had a taste of acting. Our mom always took us, and our dad took us to cultural stuff a lot. And either free opera at the park and Central Park, or we would take dance classes or gymnastic classes or tap dance, or we would do all types of crafts and all kinds of things. And in my teenage years, she knew about my storytelling, and I was doing a lot of writing and sketch art. But I wanted to do something in the summer, and she found Tina Satin. Now, Miss Tina Satin was, if you saw Debbie Allen in Fame, this is Tina Satin.
Okay.
But with a massive afro and probably 4 inches shorter.
Wow. I have the image. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And with a leopard print. Anytime, she always had leopard print something with rings and her wonderful fro and a stick. She would walk with her stick too. And with heels. So you couldn't miss with Miss Tina, and she was amazing. And I later found out when during the summertime we were working. She had a Huggy Bear, Antonio Fargas,
Mm-hmm.
to perform with us and stuff. And then, as they were sharing information, I was like, oh, okay. People are like, yeah, she's one of the original teachers of Denzel. So I was like, oh, okay. So for like a year and some change, I worked with her.
Oh, wow.
And her main, and I was 15,
mm-hmm.
and her main focus, and I think she's the one who put the main seed in of the fact that it was a craft. Not a game.
You just didn't just show up and play make-believe. There was something behind it.
Believe with the toys and the Tonka trucks. It's a craft, and it's something that you actually have to hold it or not. Because, you either have to want it or just don't do it. And honor it. Honor what it all requires. Her main thing was saying, if it's not gut bucket, then I don't want, then it's shit. Then it's shit. It ain't got bucket, it's shit.
That's perfect. Wow. That is so perfect. Okay.
Yes, because you got to fight. It's got to be life or death on that stage. So I was like, ooh, I'm 15. I'm like, shit.
Wow.
But I felt her, and I honored her, and I was like amazed by her and about the passion. Okay. So I, walked with that, but I didn't think about it until I saw that sign. And then I was like, I kind of liked doing what I did back then. Let me try and let me just audition. I take my mind off of this other stuff. And I did, and I auditioned for that. It was Clark Fidelia's play that Keisha was in, and I played the ghost, the haunted ghost. And yeah, ever since then, I was just like, oh, shucks.
Wow. It's got me. Wow. That is amazing. You know how many times I hear stories of people, it's like, yeah, I was studying this or this, and then I saw a flyer. Like, I went to City College for mechanical engineering. And I realized that I did not like, it's not that I didn't like the math. I just wasn't enjoying myself. I found myself during breaks. I was going to, I would see plays, or I would go to the planetarium that they had in the science building. Yes. People didn't realize we had a working planetarium in our science building. And I'd go see shows there. There was something, I would go sit in there for lunch. And then one day I saw a flyer when they were doing Othello. And I auditioned. And, got to be part of the, and that was it. And then that next semester, I changed over to communication, film, and theater. And it's like, and then that's what I did. And I'm glad I did.
And you came into the fold.
Yeah. And it was like, you meet a bunch of kindred spirits. It's, it's like, oh, you get it. Cause you try to explain to some people what it's like, but when you're around performers, they know what it's like. It's like you're explaining it. It's like you're preaching to the choir. It's like, what do you love about this? And I'm like, I just love it. It's something I enjoy doing. And the fact you make a good point of, it's a craft, and learning that what it takes from idea to pen to page, and it takes a whole army to put it together. So someone has an idea, someone helps them develop that idea. To the actors that help to bring it to life. I mean, I loved sometimes when I would write short plays, and to see how people would take just that idea and it would become something different when it's embodied by the spirit of an actor, where it takes what you wrote and makes it something completely different, because art is so subjective. As a writer or a creator, you think one thing, you have your idea of where it come from and, the themes, but then the actor comes in and they bring something else out of it. And then the director brings something else out of it. The sound design, the lighting, the stage, the set.
Oh my God.
And then the audience discover something completely different. And so whenever someone says, well, this is the theme I saw, and I'm like, I'm always curious to know when I speak to people, it's like, you know, for writer creative, it's like, what was your thought when you came up with it? And then as an actor, well, what was your experience? What was it to you? Because everyone brings something different, and you get this thing that we call art.
Then that's beautiful. That's so it's magical, and it's life.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what that is. I mean, it's a reaffirmation of life, whether it's in a canvas, whether it's a sculpture, whether it's dance, whether it's a film or theater or even comedy, you know, stand-up comedy. It's still a reaffirmation of a telling of a story, of a representation of a moment of life.
Yes, absolutely. And it changes. You know what I mean? If you think about things that you watched when you were younger or the first time or before you experienced something, and then you watch it again and it's a whole different experience. Like things I enjoyed or watched, you know, before I got married, before I had children, it's a whole different take. Like for me, I used to be big into watching horror, like things like jump scares, those type of things. Somewhere along the way, I lost the nerve for it. So it's now the anxiety I get, and we'll kind of talk about, you know, when we get it to later to some of the stuff you know you've done and you're doing now, and I'll tell you, you know, my experience with that whole universe and the type of shows I watch and the ones I don't watch anymore. And it's because, you know, I like predictable, like the CSIs, the NCISs of the world, because I know what I'm going to get. It's the reason why Law and Order has been on forever. You know, when you sit down, you know what you're going to get. No surprises. But then some shows, and this is happening, you know, when you go to streaming and some of the longer form content, and the fact that a lot of shows are more serialized these days, where the way, you know, when we were a kid, it was wash, rinse, repeat. You know, the character was the same at the beginning of the show as when the show went off the air. There was no development. But then you started getting development and characters, and you get involved. And for me, it's like when that tension of not knowing, well, is this character that I've invested in, are they going to be back? Where, you know, Batman, you knew Batman was going to get out of that. You know, the Joker captured him. It was gonna be a two-parter. Batman was gonna get out next week, unless Batgirl was on. Then you know it was gonna be a one-parter. But Gilligan's Island, you know, the headhunters weren't gonna eat Gilligan. You know, you knew that type of stuff. The Fall Guy, you knew Lee Majors wasn't dying in the episode. But then the 80s come along and you start to get some of these creatives, you know, that are doing things like LA Law, and you got Hill Street Blues, and you start
Hill Street Blues, yeah.
And then you start to see these shows where, you know, you got the, you know, Michael Mann's, you know, that Alan Sorkin, those type where now it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. And the anxiety of that unknown. And I think that's why a lot of these things people tune in and day out and week in and week out. And, you know, we can get into the benefits of watching a show 1 week at a time versus the whole, the whole binging.
Or binge watching, yeah.
Yeah, it just changes the show and how you feel about it. Like years ago, I used to watch the show Alias, and every episode ended in a cliffhanger. And I loved it, and I couldn't wait till next week. The show was much more enjoyable when I was watching it on streaming, where I could binge the whole thing, because I didn't have that anxiety. I enjoyed it so much more. 24 is the same way. It's like, and I'm realizing that when they tell you you're on the edge of your seat when something's good, like you're like, and then you realize you're not breathing. I'm like, I can't do the not breathing shows anymore. I need the stuff where I can breathe. And I think I blame the kids. I blame them.
So, but why? Because do you feel that because you have kids, the concept of stress is because of worrying about them, or is it just you are stressed enough?
And I think that's, and it's not because I have stress on my life, but I think that's what it is. It's like, for me, the transference of, like, a prime example, I used to love roller coasters.
Oh God!
But then as my kids got older, I would take them. And for me, it's not enjoyable anymore, because when you're on a ride with your kids, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what happens if this thing opens up? I'm going to have to hold on to them, and am I going to be strong enough to save them? It's not fun anymore. It's not fun anymore. So they go on the rides, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. So it's, and I think that's a part of it. It's that transformative knowing that there's stakes, it's not so just, the stakes are not just me. It's like, it's this big stake. So I can't, I can watch the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens, because I know at the end, yeah, Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers are going to kill a bunch of people, but the main people are going to make it. That's how it works. You know that. Well, yeah. They're going to make it. But, and that's kind of been my experience of, what I'm capable of dealing with now. And it's like, I chalk it up to old age, and it's the weirdest thing in the world, but it's as we change how we consume things and how we encounter them. And, the same reason, like, well, I didn't like spinach when I was a kid. I love spinach now. So it's like, as we change, as we evolved, and it's the same way with how the arts interact with us. It's a two-way street. I don't care what anyone says. People go, oh, it's the idiot box. It's you're just consuming. I'm like, no. As a audience member, as a participant, it's two ways.
And it's a willing one, because the moment you click on that button, you're looking for something.
Yes.
You might discover stuff that you didn't expect to see, and then you're engaged. So, and you're having an ongoing questioning of, what am I watching?
Yep.
Why am I watching? Do I like this? Oh my God, I didn't expect that. And then you're hooked.
And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm not crying, you're crying. Like,
right.
It's like, I didn't expect that to affect me the way it did. But then I smile when when a book or a show affects me or impacts me emotionally. I don't know, the meaning for me is so much more when it connects to me in that way that I just didn't expect. That keeps me coming back. So for you, as a, when you go from City College and, you get that bug and that seed is now grown, and you starting to do shows and you're starting to create, how do you transition? You take what you learned in school, you learned in the theater department and all the different things that they brought out to help you, hone that, that craft, whether it's from seeing the writing and seeing the directing and stage management, all the different things you get to, be a part of, because, anyone that really is serious about it, it's not just one thing. You have to see the whole picture to be successful. Some people are better at different facets, but there's a reason why you have to learn a little bit of everything. After a short break, I'll be back with more of my amazing interview with Aixa Kendrick. How do you take that and transition from school to the real world of, going out there on auditions, and, what was that phase like?
Ooh, it was very interesting. And I will say, I already got a little, David Willinger, our teacher.
Professor David Willinger.
Always. Outside of being, I think he was I won't say one of the few, but I think he definitely was, he represented the downtown, Lower East Side experimental art and experimental storyline and theater, and even some multimedia, because, he was interested in Grotowski and body movement and puppetry. And so he was definitely not one of those straight ahead kinds of storylines. And he definitely would encourage us to look for things and discover parallels in different texts, but to go far with the craft, to go far with that, and to see, what you can do, flex your wings. So he would always pull some of us into some of his work and his shows downtown in Theater for the New City, or maybe at La Mama. And so I already kind of started to get a sense of how real theater worked. There's theater at school, and then there's the real people.
And I think that's really a key point you make with Professor Wellinger. It's the in school, the craft, but then also, like you said, the real world part of it, and to see what one led to the other and how you dealt with it, and allow, and you're right, he encouraged us to be involved, even if it wasn't, as actors or performers, but the behind the scenes. I mean, I learned so much from being able to, be assistant stage managers, or, being part of, furniture movers, or, it was just so exciting just to be part of a real performance. When I say real, where people were paying money to come see a show,
Right.
And just to have that part of it. Like for me, my favorite part of theater has always been, and maybe this is crazy, is rehearsals. I had so much fun rehearsals and workshopping, and for me the performance is like, yeah, that's nice, that's the cherry on top, but everything that happens before the show, before the curtain goes up, for me that was my favorite part, the chaos of putting on a show. Like, and
messy.
the controlled chaos of putting on a show. And I think that's probably why today I love the behind the scenes. I like being the person that makes it happen where you don't know it's happening. And I guess my best shows I felt were when there were mistakes that happened, whether it was audio cues or something happened and the audience never knew. We knew, and we would laugh about it later, but you became trained to the point where you reacted and you adjusted and you kept going. That's why I think live theater there's nothing like it, because there is no safety net. It's, you keep going. The show must go. You keep going.
The show goes
not
on.
to take away anything from film and television. You could do some amazing things with another take or in the editing room. But live theater, that excitement, and for me, the butterflies would stop once the curtain went up. Then it was just kind of like, let's go,
right.
Let's go, let's get it on. But that's interesting that you're taking. You saw the importance of it, and maybe you didn't see it at the time, but kind of helped you with that transition from being in the classroom to being out as a professional.
Definitely, as well as hearing or learning more and more about seeing how certain theaters are run and how others aren't run or run differently. And you ask yourself questions. I would say that there's lots of, there were a lot of learning, I think, when it came to, noticing that, our language, and I think our stories at the time, I think we came after the whole, the black African American, the black theater movement, and which was very visceral, and there was still some embers of it, but we were we came out of that 80s into 90s, and we were more on the hip hop zone, and so the storylines had a little different. There was still Top Dog Underdog, and there was still a couple other things that came out around that time, but I think our pod of theater folk were kind of in an interesting zone of more either it wasn't quite this or it wasn't quite that, and then you either went this way, or a lot of people, like for us, we were theater arts.
Mm-hmm.
There was still the BFA.
Yep.
In their zone of, but we're real actors. We only focus on acting, and we're going to go either to Lincoln Center, this and that,
Juilliard, or that type of
TV and film.
Yeah.
It was very specific. Whereas our group, we were expected to learn playwriting, costume design, lighting, sound, set design, all of that stuff, directing, producing, as well as acting. So we were constantly not forced, we were encouraged. Sometimes it felt forced, but a lot of times that it made you understand that there were more sides to this diamond.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one thing. And I think that helped us then be able to maneuver differently and find, okay, I'll stage manage financially. Okay, let me get a job here.
Okay.
Let me get a job this. Oh, I can get paid doing set design. Okay, we're gonna do. So you weren't quite, I'm just an actor.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, one of the biggest gifts to help maneuver through starting to go through the theater and go, oh, okay, I can help do that. Or, okay, we can do that too. Instead of like, well, I don't do that. I'm an actor. We never really had that, or I never had that reaction. So I think being able to move in different places and spaces was part of the gift.
Okay. That's nice to hear and to see, and I think you're right. It makes you more well-rounded, and it lets you take more chances, I guess. You don't put yourself in a box, and you're not limited, because you're like, oh, sure. You're more likely to say, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
I'll help you design the lights for that show.
Yeah, we had to hang the lights, didn't we?
Yes, I got over my fear of heights because Owen he made me go up into those rafters in Davis Hall, and
the catwalk.
I learned how to hang lights and replace gels, and use the light patch machine. I learned how to do the whole manual and program that, and it's amazing. It's skills that I use to this day, and I'm so thankful for things like that. I spent 20 years in the financial world, and it took the pandemic for me to get back to the things that I learned. It's like it wasn't, and it wasn't time. It wasn't the time for me to do it, and now is the time for me to do it. And I love it, and I really enjoy helping people get their vision. And it's funny, my wife and I were talking, the other day, and she said, "Do you ever think of getting back into acting?" And I told her, you know what? I actually do. My youngest is a year away from going to college, so it's not that I'm doing it as an empty nester, but my time and my focus is now opening up differently. And absolutely, there's some, local theaters down here, community theaters, and I absolutely am going to see myself. I'm going to show up, and, cause it doesn't go go away. And even if I'm not on the stage, I'm more than willing to help behind the stage and do those type of things and help them workshop and help them, help people run scenes. It's like, for me, that's the fun stuff. That's the grit of it. And I'm looking forward to it. It's, it's going to be an exciting phase, and I'm going to continue to, do the show, record the podcast.
If you could play a character, what type of character? If you could say, okay, that would be cool. The first thing that came to my head. The first thing. Oh, you already edited.
Almost like a Hercule Poirot type character. Like I want, that's like a Columbo type. Like my first love was mysteries. That was my first love, and I would love to be, not the proverbial gritty, grizzled ex-cop
No.
that's now, but I could just see some sort of mystery. Like Agatha Christie has always been,
Yeah,
you know,
we grew up with that, watching that. Miss Marple.
yeah,
Also.
Miss Marple.
Oh
So
my
it's
God.
like, for me,
And
it's
Peter
like,
Sellers.
it's
My
like being that person that helps, the unexpected person that helps solve something, whether it's the guy that just retired or he has a regular day job, but I could see doing something like that. And,
Have you seen Castle? You've seen that?
Oh, I love Castle. Like,
it's the book writer.
Yes. It's like, and I've always, Moonlighting was one of my favorite shows. The Rockford Files is one of my all-time favorites. So for me, that type of character, that flawed character that no one expects to be able to solve something, Murder, She Wrote, anytime Jessica came to town, I'm like, y'all know somebody's gonna die. Y'all need to be on the lookout. But that type of, and the format doesn't matter to me. It's like that. It's the discovery. It's like I watch so many British shows, and I think they do an amazing job with those type of 6-7 episode stories, and it's so gritty and so the stuff that Idris did. I can't think of the character name now, but Luther, his show Luther. Yeah. It's like that type
That's the
of stuff.
chef.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like, so you see these type of things. That's the type of character. It's like, I'm not the, I don't need to be the romantic leading. That's not me. It's like that comes out of it because it's not the main part of the character. It's the quirky, that's, the dad that's looking for something to do, or, but that's always been, I've always, in my mind, I'm Jim Rockford. I'm David Addison from Moonlighting. I'm that guy. So I could see something like that, and who knows, it could be something I create myself, or,
I'm listening.
Yeah.
You know me. I'm like,
and then it's like even like audio drama. As a kid, I loved audio drama. Like, to this day on one of the XM channels, they play like those old serials, and I listen to them like, oh, what's gonna happen next? It's silly, but I love that stuff.
They're great. They play that a lot. They on the internet radios, they have a lot of those too. And so there's an old school, what I would say, that plays a lot of 40s and 30s music, and then they have a moment, I think on Sundays, Saturday nights, I think, is when they have just a lot of the old radio dramas.
And there's something about it it's such an amazing art form to pull people in. It's like a living story, and it's like you're using your imagination. It's like you don't know what the characters look like. They look like how you think they look like.
You imagine,
yes, and it, that's something I definitely.
Whole other craft.
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing because you got foils, you got the people doing the sound. Sometimes it's
the
Digital,
Foley
but
editors. There's amazing things you could do with sound, and the different. And I'll watch videos for hours of those sound designers that come up with it's like, man, how'd you come up with that sound? And you're like, oh, I just put some shoes on my hands and I'm just clopping along.
Yeah, and then the sand, you put some pepper, some crusty salt. Yeah.
So I see things like that, and that's in my mind. So we'll see what happens.
You do it from podcast to your mystery storyline.
Yeah. And, stay tuned.
I see it happening. In fact, I'll hear it happening.
Okay. So with so you went to City College. You started doing theater and things like that. And
but I also did voiceover. So we were talking.
I remember you mentioned that. So did you were doing that when you were younger, and then you've also done
I did it professionally, yeah.
Okay,
and I still do it because I've done.
I saw one of the clips that was on your website, and I was laughing at that. I just thought that was hilarious. Yeah, we have like that type of stuff, and like I'm a big fan of, and I, forgive me if I say her name wrong. I can never know. I don't know if it's Cree or Cray Summer, but she does so many voices on so many shows that, and Mark Hamill, a whole second career but he is one of the most prolific voice actors. But and now Dawn Lewis too does a lot of voice acting. Like she plays the captain and other characters on that Lower Deck, the new Star Trek Lower Deck. So it's like, I love voice actors. I mean, and there's something about it, even from when Casey Kasem was doing Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. It's like things like that, I think Peter Welling,
it's such an interesting way. It's all about the breath, and it's all about, how the cadence, and then of course the character and the intonation and stuff like that. And it's just the rhythm of it all. It's very interesting.
So question I have for you. So, your mother's Puerto Rican.
Yes, she is.
So did you grow up in a truly bilingual household, or?
Sí, seguro. ¿Y por qué no? No. She spoke fluent Spanish because that's her first language. Yep. But she also spoke fluent English because she was, an occupational therapist, physical therapist. And she got to the level of being, for a few years, the chief for that department at Harlem Hospital. So, she was quite fluid and quite adept at language. So, but I could hear, and I always say that my the level of Spanish is probably like a maybe 6-year-old.
Hey, 6-year-olds know a lot of words.
6-year-olds can be semi-articulate. They can. I think, maybe then I'll say 4.
Okay. There's one thing I've always been amazed by. It's like people who English is not their first language, and to understand it's like it's such a way that people treat people that English isn't their first language, that for me is frustrating, because when you speak to people and you realize it's like, wait, you try speaking their language and you tell me how you would sound, first of all. And most people I know that English is not their first language, they usually know 2, 3, 4 languages easily. And can have a conversation with you, and you're like, oh, the accent is crazy, this person sounds dumb. I'm like, dude, really?
It takes a lot of effort to learn a new language.
Yes. Like, I can't even understand teenagers. So it's like,
easy, not normal.
People that know multiple languages. Yes.
You can go, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, French. They've kind of flow. But English, how's that?
English is crazy. I don't know what we thought we were thinking and I love watching the videos on Twitter and and the Instagram and TikTok of people making fun of, which they're like, goose. And it's like, well, what's the plural? And it's like, gooses? And they're like, no, it's geese. And I'm like, that makes no sense. But moose, you go moose, then it must be mooses. No, it's actually moose. And it's like, stop. Yes. Right. So it's like when someone that didn't learn English as a child learns English, and you're going to give them grief because of how they sound. I'm like, seriously, you've known English your whole life, and I've seen how you write and what you talk. So,
true.
So stop. Okay. You still have a problem between your and you are. So let's not stop. But
there or there.
So I'm always, impressed and amazed, and when people have that skill, because it's another way to communicate and to experience different cultures differently. It's like you experience things different when you're bathed in it and you have that. So just a little curiosity. So it's, I'm, people that know multiple language, I'm always like, just wow. I know enough Spanish where if someone dropped me in Spain or in a country in Latin America where they speak Spanish, it's like I'd survive. I'd eat. I'd be able to find my way to the library, and I'd be able to eat. I wouldn't be lost completely, but I know enough from watching telenovelas for years to survive to at least know when someone's about to smack me. Sábado gigante. So yeah, so but that's always interesting. But voiceovers, so you do voiceovers, you also have directed, you act, producing, like what's led you up to and right. So I look at your bio and I look at the thing that stands out, and I remember seeing all the pictures posted online of you as this warrior, General Oni. Like, how do you get to that, how did that come about? Like, tell me that story of, you did 4 tours. I mean, tell me about that.
I would say, man, like anything. And I think a lot of artists say the same thing. Usually it finds you. So just like the flyer, how would you know? So you looking for a flyer? Yeah. No, you just like, so you find it and you may be looking for an audition, or, it's backstage. You go through the backstage and say, maybe here. Oh, let me look for something. And then you see a description of a character and you're like, And usually there's like a little familiar feeling that you're like, something about this. I like the storyline. And he posted it, I think, in the end of 2017. Okay. We were rehearsing. And Leon Gray is prolific, by the way, of all kinds of plays. From the, Black Angels over Tuskegee. So he did that about the Tuskegee Airmen. And he's done interesting things about the Girls of Summer, the all-Black baseball team in the 40s. So he's constantly doing things that are historical and semi-educational, but there's more about the entertainment as well as then the characters and how that might, it's just something juicy about those stories. And so for me, I mean, I've played, I don't want to say, I'll just say I've tapped into more of my African ancestry many a time in different characters and different energies and warriors, from either the Oya piece that Baba David D. Wright did, that I played the lead Oya, the warrior wind tornado goddess, as well as then when Arthur French directed what is her name? Jacqueline Wade's Black Panther Women, and I played Fred Hampton's wife. Okay. And so that whole strong women, energy, purposeful, Sojourner Truth also, and then some in all those things. So this character, I was like, wow, it's a general. Something interesting about her. And I like the monologue. That was with the size you get. Okay. And you kind of dissect it and you're like, what do I get in this?
What am I bringing to this? Okay.
Yeah, but I'm also I'm like Columbo. I'm like, just a minute, hold on a minute.
One more thing.
One more thing. So when I do that with my script, I'm like, one more thing. Wait, what was that about? And then I just do I'm very curious about who this person is. It's like a date. I'm dating. So I date my character to get a sense of like, wait, what makes you this interesting, or what makes you that way? Why I'm curious. So I did some research and I found out about the Dahomey Warrior women. I was like, wow, that's deep. I've heard about them.
Mm-hmm.
And they use the term Amazon. They were called the Amazon. But that was, usually referred to the Grecian females and stuff. But, of Wonder Woman, but the Dahomey warriors were real women. So I was like, that's so interesting. And I'm fascinated about these women. Like, how would they live? What did they do? So, yeah, I went there. You go to an audition spot that they have hundreds of in New York City, different spots. And you sit there, you get your sign-in sheet, you do your song and dance, you hear your headshot. We'll bring you in a minute. I'm sitting there, I talk to some of the people, like, oh, what do you think? We chit chat, and then you go in, and you're like, say hi, and it's like, okay, we're gonna read, and so I just did whatever I felt she wanted to do. Okay. And so she kind of used the space and moved around, and as always, they say, if you want to use a chair, you can use a chair. If you want to stand, you can stand. And so I did all of that, and as well as use the floor, So
you brought the physicality into it also. Okay.
Yeah. I do my best to, and this is, before COVID. So before COVID, lots of people were going into the rooms, auditioning and using the space. And so you did a lot of physical stuff because if you're going to be on stage, fine. If you weren't and they film you, then they film you on on the camera, and they say, okay, can you just stay in the frame?
Okay.
Yeah, then you just do that. Okay. But since this is theater, you can do whatever because they want to see what you're going to bring to the mix, right?
So how long did you have to wait from the audition? Did you have a callback? Did you have a second audition? Like, when did it get to where you're like, okay, I got this?
I think it was, maybe it was a couple of days afterwards. I think it was a couple of days that they sent an email and said, we are interested in you as a character of General Monet, and let me know. Wow. Let us know. And so, yeah, I didn't have a callback.
Wow.
I don't recall what they did, which, is part of, I guess, saving time, is that they would match us. So you did your monologue. Okay. Then you go out, and then other characters
that you so you'd interact with some. Okay.
So they kind of get a sense of what they would call for cameras, a chemistry read.
Yep.
So they want to read how you vibe off each other, and so I guess they saw whatever they needed to see, and there you go.
Wow. So you said that was 2017, 2018, and then
that was before Black Panther.
Okay.
And that's so the first one.
Yeah. That's amazing, the timing of these things and how it always seems like, and I know there's probably like a psychological term for it. It's like you think, oh, wow, we're seeing a whole lot of these type of stories today. And it's the same thing like when you get a new car or you get a certain type of thing, suddenly you start seeing it more. And it's just the way our minds work. A lot of times it's just how we're more in tune and focused to seeing something once you've experienced it. Now you all of a sudden you're like, oh, there it is. It's popping up everywhere. But then sometimes it's the whole thing of, oh, that's a good idea. We got to get one of those too. then everybody's doing it. So, it is the world of the performing arts. And there's that.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it, there was a question. We were like, well, did people see that? Yeah. But I think and I go back to collective consciousness, I think it was the bubbling of the time, just like, I guess there are a lot of other people working on the light bulb. So, and then who got the patent first, which one mattered, which one didn't matter. It was all happening in different realms. Yeah. So I think it was more of a collective unconsciousness kind of coming in play. You know, it was just a time of seeing more women, strong women, or that theme into play. Yeah.
So you did 4 tours of that show. So like, how far did you travel? Was it like, what was that like?
Well, the tours were the first tour we just did, we were in Manhattan.
Okay.
So that was one. And then the other, when I say tours, and I call them tours because that was my little phraseology of, you know, being like for a general and for her warriors and her battalion, basically.
I like that.
So that's just my little phraseology. It's also, we went to then National Black Theater Festival down in North Carolina in Winston-Salem.
Okay.
And performed it there on the main stage. And that's not basically, we did that for I think 3 days.
Okay.
Then the next time we did it was probably in 2018, and we went to Pittsburgh. Right. We went to Pittsburgh, and we performed that there for I think 3 weekends.
Okay.
I think something like that, yeah. And it was cool because we got to see the August Wilson Museum there, which is up there because he's from Pittsburgh. Yep. He was from Pittsburgh, New York, and in Pennsylvania. And I don't know. Then the last one was like after COVID, or get an email 2 years. It was like 2 years later.
Hey, we're thinking about starting this up again. Are you in?
Yeah.
So
that's that, and that was like something that I kind of realized after playing this character the second time. I was like, it's like, being called in again, and that's like a span of time.
Yeah.
How
do you get back into that?
It's just the physicality, or not even the mindset. Gotcha. It's just a lot of the physicality, unless you're constantly doing that or you're
doing something similar.
Yeah. But this one, this last tour was in Miami. We did it in Miami, Florida. Yeah.
Nice.
And that was at the top of this year. That set was off the chain. That set was crazy.
Nice.
And it had a running waterfall.
Oh, wow.
And a raked stage. And these beams and sticks. I mean, we were nominated. That's why we're nominated for all those awards for the Broadway world, because of the whole set and the whole thing.
The whole vision. That had to be amazing. To see before, and and then just to see it evolve, and then that part of it. So that's amazing to hear. Well, there you have it. We come to the end of part 1 with my interview with Aixa Kendrick. It's been an amazing adventure here in the season premiere episode 701 of the Multifarious Man podcast, The Art of Performance, part 1. Now, if you think what you heard this week was great, you got to tune in next week for the amazing second half of my interview with Aixa. We really get into it and have a lot of fun. So until next time, again, this is the Multifarious Man podcast, and I am out of here. The Multifarious Man podcast is produced and edited by Multifarious Man Productions. Your host is John Michael Vincent, aka the Multifarious Man. Original music and lyrics by John Michael Vincent.
Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Demon Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand, I'm the Multifarious Man.